Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of all of us here at Savision, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Stephen Dwyer, and I'm the lead developer of our latest product, Cloud Reporter. And it's my pleasure today to introduce you to this product and take you through a few demos and show you what we've put together. Just to take a quick look at our agenda, we're not going to try to keep you past more than half an hour. We recognize your time is valuable today. Of course, the bulk of the presentation is going to be showing you Cloud Reporter itself and demonstrating some of the features. However, we're also going to talk a little bit about why we built it, how it collects the data it relies upon, and in particular, how it integrates with Operations Manager. And then finally, we want to hear your feedback on what you think of the product and what directions you'd like us to take it in the future. Cloud Reporter is in the hands of some beta customers right now, and they've already given us some very valuable feedback, and we've made changes to the product based on that. So what is Cloud Reporter? Well, we've got a little big pitch statement there at the top, but basically Cloud Reporter is a reporting tool for the private cloud. In our first version, we're supporting Microsoft's Hyper-V platform, but we do have plans to include VMware support in the future, as we do encounter many customers running on mixed virtualization platforms. Cloud Reporter itself is integrated right into System Center Operations Manager. We found that a lot of virtualization administrators want to use interfaces that they're already familiar with, and they don't want to have to support additional consoles or applications. The one downside of Operations Manager is the SQL Server reporting services that the reports are standardized on. Doesn't give you the prettiest reports, but at the same time, it does allow us to give you a lot of valuable information and to leverage the investments that you've already made in Operations Manager, data warehousing, and data collection. So in this first version of Cloud Reporter, we've really focused on three main areas. The first one is auditing. And there we're really answering the questions, what do I have and how am I using it when it comes to physical resources and virtual resources as well. Second area we call predictive capacity planning. And there the question we're answering is what problems am I going to run into in the future? And thirdly, we talk about right sizing. And there we're asking the questions, how can I put off problems and how can I make better use of my resources that I have today? So without further ado, we're going to jump right into a demo of Cloud Reporter itself. And we'll take you through some of the reports and show you some of the things that it can do for you. First report we're going to look at is just the overview. Now, again, everything we're doing is integrated right into System Center Operations Manager, and this is the standard reporting framework that you should be familiar with already. And here, what we can do is report on any individual host, any individual cluster, any host group that you've configured, and any way that you've mixed and matched those things together. So here we'll just look at all hosts, but if you configured host groups, particular business units, or particular data centers, so on, you can definitely pick those and report on just those at any particular time. So we'll just wait for this report to come up, and what it's doing is it's showing us the state of our virtualized environment at this point in time. So of course in our demo environment we don't have very much hardware. You can see that we have 3 hosts, 44 virtual machines are ready to run, but actually only 22 of them are running at this point in time. And we've got our critical metric here, virtual machine density or consolidation ratio. So we've got 7.3 virtual hosts for every actual physical host. Going through the rest of this overview report, it talks about the different resources, memory, processor, storage that we have installed into these hosts, and how much is available. So here we've got 72 gigabytes of RAM installed, almost 8 gigabytes of RAM is available. Now one of the things these reports do is they do make predictions about the future. And they make predictions based on your unique environment, not some average environment that we think is appropriate, but it actually looks at your environment and makes predictions based upon that. So looking at our usage of virtual memory in our demo environment, we know that we have room for 3 additional virtual machines. And based on our historical rate of adding and subtracting virtual machines, we know that the memory is going to be depleted within 1 to 4 weeks. So this is a red flag for us right away. we know either we have to start right-sizing some virtual machines or we need to get additional hardware. We do the same thing for storage. How much storage is provisioned for the virtual machines? Of course, that can sometimes be more, depending if you're using dynamic VHDs or not, than the storage that's actually in use. And we'll flag, of course, if the provisioned is more than what you have installed. And again, based on our historical usage, storage for 18 more virtual machines, 3 to 6 months of supply. And for processor consumption, we don't use a lot of processor in this demo environment. We've got 50 virtual machines left. We want to see how we arrived at those overall numbers, so we can dig a little deeper. All the reports in Cloud Reporter are click-through, so you can go from one to another. They're all linked together. So here we've showed our 3 hosts. One of them is not part of a cluster. It's just running by itself. The other 2 are clustered together. So we can see we've got, in this particular cluster, 35 gigahertz of processing power total, distributed between the 2 hosts. We can look at the virtual machine load. Over the time frame of this report, we have between 7 and 15 virtual machines running on the first host at any point in time. Idle processor runs around 72% on average. And of course, you can look at the range as well. Every so often we bump up into 0 idle processor when all the machines get busy at the same time. We can jump back, and of course, you can dig into those details for memory as well as storage. If you're interested in how those metrics change over time, instead of looking at this snapshot of how things are right now, we can look at how they've been fluctuating through the past. So we'll just wait for that report to come up as well. And here we are. So we can see how our virtual machine density has been changing over time. Actually, you can see here that we dropped a new host in a little while ago, and virtual machine density dropped because we didn't have any virtual machines running on that host. But over time, we've been starting to add more virtual machines, and densities come back up. History for number of virtual machines. History for unused physical memory as well. Same for storage, and same for processor. Then if we jump back, we can also see that we've got reports just for host details. And of course, this report is clickable through any of the other reports. So when we have this list of hosts in the cluster, we could have clicked through to see this one as well. Or you can start it on its own if there's a particular host you're interested in at some point in time. And this one really gets into the low-level details about the virtual machines that are running on this host, what resources those virtual machines are making use of, and their trends over time. So as it pulls a little bit more information, it takes a little bit longer to come up. We'll just give it another second or two. And here we are. So for this particular host, and of course we can look at these things at the cluster level as well. 24 virtual machines configured, 14 are running right now. Here we have the history of those running virtual machines. So you can see if you've been starting or stopping virtual machines, or if the cluster's been load balanced and virtual machines have hopped from one host to another, you'll see that show up here. Memory consumption just for this machine. And we'll scroll right to the bottom where we start to look at the actual virtual machines themselves. So for each virtual machine, we actually show the fraction of time that it's spent running. Over the duration of this report, some of the machines have been running the whole time. Our domain controllers, for example. Others of them, one of our build machines, is just running 11% of the time. We just pick it off when we need to do something. And again, you can see the demands that those virtual machines have been making on resources, both memory and processor as well. So that really gets into our snapshot in time and our historical reports. That's really what we term auditing. And of course, we're going to be adding more functionality in each of those reports, but it really tells me, what do I have? Now, within those, we also have some capacity predictions as well. What's going to go wrong in the future? If I want to put off some of those problems, I can jump into some of our task-based reports and carry out some right-sizing. For example, one problem that a lot of people encounter is virtual machine sprawl, or idle virtual machines that no one's using. This is particularly a problem when you have self-serve environments. So, for example, you might allow people in your environment to create off their own virtual machines. They might use them for a while, and they just might walk away without powering them off. So these virtual machines are sitting there not very much at all, but at the same time, they're taking up resources. They're taking up memory that's been allocated towards them, and they're also taking up disk space. So we have a lot of customers who actually write their own scripts to go in and try to apply some heuristic rules into their private cloud environment to hunt down these idle virtual machines. So we tried to standardize it for them with this idle virtual machine report. And what we do is we let you configure what you want to claim an idle virtual machine is. And here we've sort of exaggerated the point of this demo. But you can say an idle virtual machine is one with maximum disk activity over some period of time under a certain value, and network usage under a certain value, and CPU load under a certain value. So when you get this combination of low disk activity, low network activity, and low CPU load, we can pretty well surmise that these are going to be idle virtual machines and candidates just to be powered off. So going in and looking at the details, we can look at these virtual machines that we've deemed idle. We can see how much VHD space they're taking up and how much memory usage they're having. And of course, the overall top line, if all these machines are idle and we power them all off, we can free up almost 9 gigabytes of physical memory. And if you remember from our overview report, we only had 1 to 4 weeks, and we had 7 gigabytes of RAM free. So this is really going to extend the lifetime of our cluster by another 2-3 weeks. Now, along the same lines of idle virtual machines, we also have the same sort of report for those machines that have been powered off. So again, powered off virtual machines, while they're not necessarily using memory, they actually could be using storage space for their VHDs. And that's actually a problem in our demo cluster right now, where we've actually run out of disk space. So we've got more hardware on the way. But in the meantime, what steps can we take before that hardware arrives to free up some more space for our virtual machines? So this report is going to go and look again at our private cloud. It's going to look at what virtual machines are running and which virtual machines have actually been powered off, and then tell us the ones that have been powered off for the longest period of time. So here, if we look at this particular host, we've got a number of virtual machines that have been powered on since September of last year. And we also can see how much disk space that they're taking up right now. So again, these are great candidates for just removing from our private cloud completely, or archiving the VHD files off onto some storage that's not connected to the cloud at all, so that we could bring it back in the future if we wanted to. Once you've cleaned up idle and powered off virtual machines, then you can start to look at some right-sizing populations. So one of the things we want to look at is memory right-sizing. Now, of course, Hyper-V does have dynamic memory, but at the same time, you can put limits on that dynamic memory. You can say that a virtual machine must power up with a minimum amount of RAM assigned to it. And you can also say that a virtual machine, even though it's asking for memory dynamically, can't ever go over a certain amount. And sometimes those are good numbers that have been assigned to the virtual machine. Sometimes they're sort of guesses. Sometimes they may have been a good amount in the past, but not necessarily a good amount in the current point in time. So the virtual machine memory right-sizing report is going to look into what the virtual machines are actually demanding in terms of memory. It's going to look at what limits, both high and low, have been assigned to those virtual machines, and then it's going to make some recommendations for how you might want to tune those limits going forward into the future. So let's wait for that one to come up. And of course, there's still some judgment calls to come into play here as well. Some virtual workloads like SQL Server, for example, you're always going to want to put a cap on the dynamic memory limit because it's just going to ask for as much as it can get its hands on and never stop asking. It's never actually a happy workload that's running. But other virtual machines, again, might be starving for RAM and might be able to make good use of whatever more that you can assign to them. And of course, since these reports are based on operations manager itself and running against the data warehouse, the more hardware you can throw at your data warehouse, the better these reports are going to run. So here we have the report itself. Now, unfortunately, this report suggests that I need more dynamic memory to be thrown at my virtual machines. I need another about 7 gigabytes to make everyone happy. So it's broken up into 2 areas. One is underallocated virtual machines. Unfortunately, I have a number of virtual machines that are underallocated. But we can see it's SQL, the greediest of the virtual machines. We can see what physical memory demand it's making, the minimum, the maximum, and the average. And here we've capped it. Well, it's asking for 11.2 gigabytes. We've capped it at 6. So to make it completely happy, we want to add another 5.2 gigabytes. Now, what I would like is to see some things under underallocated virtual machines, because that would indicate that I have memory that I can actually free up and give perhaps as one of these SQL servers. Fortunately, in our demo environment, everything's really running at peak capacity. But it's always good to see things that you can free up. So that's around memory right-sizing. We do the same sort of thing around processor right-sizing, which virtual machines could make do with more logical processors, which virtual machines actually don't need the logical processors that they're using right now either. And those are really our task-based reports. One more little interesting one is guests not monitored. Again, in self-service environments, you have a lot of people who just create their own virtual machines and do something with them. Depending on how strict you are with your IT controls, sometimes you might find out that someone's gone and put a critical application on one of these ad hoc virtual machines they've just thrown together, and then suddenly different areas of your business are counting on this virtual machine that nobody knows about. And typically, self-serve people don't necessarily know everything you need to do, and one of the things they tend to forget about is monitoring. So this report, Guests Not Monitored, actually goes in and it compares the list of all the virtual machines that you have in your private cloud against all the virtual machines Operations Manager knows about, and then it tells you the difference. So for example, you can see that our build machines have narrow monitoring on it. Even worse, some of our Exchange servers, here our production Exchange server in particular, at least in the demo environment, has narrow monitoring running on it. So that's somewhere you might want to take a closer look and say, do these virtual machines now need to be brought into Operations Manager as well? So those are our task-based reports really based around troubleshooting. Now we talked a little bit about capacity planning. And when we do capacity planning in Cloud Reporter, we really look at historical data. And we say we're going to extrapolate the past into the future and tell you when bad things are going to happen. So some of our customers have come back to us and they said, well, the past really isn't a good indication of what our future is going to be like. We tend to run rather stable workloads. Memory isn't changing very much. Processor isn't changing very much. But we know that in the future, there are going to be dramatic changes, either because we're going through budgeting processes, we're going to take some hosts out of service for maintenance, we're bringing on new applications and new workloads, and it's going to be a sudden spike. So when we do capacity planning, we really want to know not just historically how we're going to perform in the future, but also if we give you some information about what's going to change that we know about, how can we look at how our clusters and hosts are going to perform? So for that, we've actually put together some forecasting capabilities where you can build out scenarios in Cloud Reporter. So we built this little user interface, again, right in System Center Operations Manager. You never have to leave the console to run these reports or to configure them. And this forecast configuration actually lets you build out scenarios for future events. So here, for example, we have budget 2014, we've got some more memory, and we're going to make some purchases to bulk up our clusters. So for each scenario, I can specify a number of events that happen at certain points in time. So here we're going to be adding hosts to cluster number 1 at 29th of June. And then we can specify how many hosts, and we can specify the memory per host, and also the processing power per host. Same token, we can also remove hosts from a cluster if we're going to take them out of service for maintenance, for example. We can add virtual machines or workloads to clusters, and we can remove virtual machines from clusters. So we can create all these different events for a given scenario, and we can create a whole set of scenarios. And then we can take these and mix and match them and say what happens if these scenarios actually come true. So for that, we'll jump right back into reporting, and we'll bring up our cluster forecast report. Run against the whole environment again. And here we have that list of scenarios that we're just looking at. And I can choose, let's run the scenario, what if we actually get that money from budget 2014? What if we're going to be doing maintenance in the Chicago data center? I can mix and match all these scenarios. We'll just want it to run, but we can run with multiple if we want. And I can say I want to forecast, say, 6 quarters into the future. And I can specify how much room for additional virtual machines do I want. Do I want this cluster to run right at the limit, where I packed as many virtual machines on it as I can, or do I want free space to add, say, another 25% over and above the number of virtual machines that I have running today? And I can run that report, and we're going to look at the historical past to see what minimums I hit in terms of how much CPU was used, how much memory was used, how much storage was used, and what is each virtual machine taking up. And then we're going to look into the future and apply those different events. So you can see this quarter where we're in right now, we're actually constrained. Actually, we're violating a best practice. We have a cluster, but we don't have a high availability on the cluster because we've got too many virtual machines. Right now, the prediction is that I can run another minus 11 virtual machines if I want high availability on this cluster. But as soon as we hit quarter 2, we've gone into that budget process, we've got more money, we've added more hardware, and here I can add 27 additional virtual machines into that cluster. And I can see for the next few quarters as well, since there are no other events happening, that we're in the yellow as well. And again, this is a great report too to give to senior management, especially during the budget time, where you can actually come up with a whole bunch of different forecasts based on different scenarios. If you give me all the money that I'm asking for, here's what we're going to look like. If you give me nothing at all, we're going to be in red through the whole rest of the year. Or we can mix and match. You know, if you give me part of the money, but we also get these additional applications, here's how things are going to go work. And it's a great exercise to work through as well when you're going through this budgeting process. So really that concludes the little demo part. And we think that these reports, both the snapshot and time ones, historical ones, and the task-based ones, combined with the scenario playing, really to give you a good idea of how your cluster is behaving, how your private cloud is behaving, what you're going to need today and in the future to head off any problems and issues. So just a couple points on how Cloud Reporter actually works and how it collects the data. As mentioned before, Cloud Reporter is completely contained within System Center Operations Manager. So when you install it, you don't have to install any other applications, you don't have to install any other programs, no other console. All you have to do is import a couple management packs, and everything's done for you. We do have one dependency on Virtual Machine Manager. Our management packs don't actually discover any of your private cloud. We let Virtual Machine Manager do that for us. So it goes out there, it finds a cluster for hosts, virtual machines, and so on. It drops them into Operations Manager, and then we start collecting data. Now we collect a fair number of pieces of data. For each cluster, we collect 3 different pieces of data. For each host, 16, and for each virtual machine, there's 16 pieces of data. All of these are written directly into the data warehouse that Operations Manager has. Even though we're collecting all these pieces of data from all these different components, the only thing that we actually touch are your Hyper-V hosts. We never look at the actual guest OS, so we're not putting any load on the virtual machines themselves. And through the magic of cookdown in Operations Manager and some management pack wizardry, we only actually touch each host once in every 15-minute period. Now, default collection interval is 15 minutes. Some of our customers, we've overrode it for them, and we've driven down to every 5 minutes because they wanted some extra granularity to the data that they were looking at. But even then, every 5 minutes, we're only touching every host once, and no more. Now, if you've discovered the guest OS into Operations Manager yourself, and you've got your Windows client, your Windows Server management packs monitoring the guest OS, we will make use of that information as well, and we'll marry that into the reports that we produce so that you can see the view from inside the guest. But by ourselves, we don't do that. But we do leverage any other management packs that you pull in and try to bring all that information together. So really the big takeaway point, everything's in System Center Operations Manager and everything is done just with a management pack. Nothing else is required. So if you're happy with what you've seen or you want to see a little bit more, we do have evaluation copies available for you. If you want to email us at sales@savision.com, we'd be happy to accommodate you with an evaluation license and a little bit of support. If you want to see some examples of reports in more detail than we've had a chance to look at them today, we do have an online demo, demo.savision.com/cloud-reporter, where we show more of the reports, and you can actually download PDF copies of the reports themselves so you can take a look at them. And you can go to our website and you can see some more information, some training information, and so on if you want more information as well. So as I mentioned before, we do have beta customers using Cloud Reporter. They have given us valuable feedback over the last couple of months, and it really helped shape the state of the product. The whole scenario modeling component is actually based on a customer that was doing it manually themselves with a lot of Excel spreadsheets, a lot of time every month. And they said, well, can you do this for us? So we said, we're happy to do so. So if you have any requests, we're happy to take them as well and try to work them into our commercial versions. You know, our products are only as successful as the users are happy to use them. And I'll mention, too, that development on Cloud Reporter is ongoing. We do have some new reports soon to be coming out with in the next few months, some interesting new features. And, of course, on the roadmap to make it completely mixed use to add in VMware support as well. I'd really like to thank you for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a really pleasure for me to be able to show you off our new product. And I hope that you can take it back to your companies and try an evaluation out, and hopefully you'll get some good value out of it. So I wish you the best of the rest of the day, and thank you very much for attending.